Good morning. Ruslan? Okay. Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for joining us here today. My name is Therese Butler, and I'm the Senior Vice President for our HOA. Also with me today on the stage are members of the Golf Task Force and the Transition Negotiation Committee. I'd like them to each take a moment just to tell you who they are and what role they've played in this endeavor.
My name is Bob Kalenda. I'm a member of the Transition Negotiating Committee, also a former member of the Strategic Planning Committee. Is this better? No, it's the mic. Well, it's also taped. A little duct tape here. Can you hear me now? Okay. Again, my name is Bob Kalenda, a member of the Transition Negotiating Team, also a member of the Strategic Planning Committee, and I live in Unit 47. The area that I was responsible for, along with the gentleman to my left, was all issues dealing with water.
Hi, I'm Rick Cole. I was on the Golf Task Force. I dealt with water issues and some financial planning.
Good morning. I'm Damon Williams. I'm the General Manager of the HOA, and I was the board-appointed staff liaison to the Golf Task Force.
Hi there. I'm Tim Butler. I'm on the Golf Task Force in the Operations Subcommittee.
I'm Manny Medeiros. I'm on the Golf Task Force and did golf course problems, such as equipment. And I've been on the Green Committee since 2008.
Excuse me, John Michaels. I'm on the Golf Task Force and also a member of the Green Committee, which I've been forever.
Byron Cotter. I'm on the Golf Task Force and I'm on the Finance Sub-Team.
I'm Joyce Howard. I'm on the Golf Task Force and also on the Finance Sub-Team.
I'm Mike Collins. I'm on the Transition Negotiating Committee. I've been on the Finance Committee for many years, so I've been on the finance side of things.
Not here today are from the Golf Task Force, Mike Brenny. Mike Brenny was the co-chair of the GTF as well as marketing and communications. And I was going to say Susan's not here. Also not here is Susan Richards. She also was on marketing or is on marketing and communications. From the Transition Negotiating Committee, the two individuals who are not here are Vince Gwizdowski and Diane Ashby. So with that, to get started, first of all, I'd like to know how many people in the audience have not seen the presentation. How many people in the audience have not reviewed the materials on the website? How many people have not looked at the letter of intent that came with the ballot? Okay, I'll just try and give a brief update as to what was included, and then we'll move forward with the Q&A. Basically, the negotiated terms for the golf course acquisition are the purchase of two golf courses, the Mountain View Golf Course and the Preserve Golf Course, two maintenance golf course yards, all the equipment associated with maintaining the golf courses, albeit it is old and has been budgeted to be replaced, and all golf carts. In addition, it includes the deeded properties to the existing Ridgeview pickleball courts, as well as the area adjacent to it that is slated also for additional pickleball courts. Part of the negotiated terms also include that Mr. Robeson will not vote his lots for this ballot. In addition, we've been guaranteed 100% of all of the effluent water for the Preserve Golf Course that is manufactured on a daily basis by Saddlebrook Utilities Company. So why is that important to have that effluent water? It's important because unlike when the remaining areas of Saddlebrook were developed, when the preserve golf course and actually all the residential area up there was going into development, it fell under what is called the Central Arizona Groundwater Replenishment District, CAGRD. CAGRD's job is to ensure that there's water supplies also going on for the next 100 years in cooperation with the Department of Water Resources. In order to do that, CAGRD wants to see water replenishment, and they also want to see golf courses and other manufacturers using effluent water whenever possible, as opposed to potable water. Potable is drinking fresh water. Effluent is treated sewage, which is okay to put on golf courses for irrigation. Effluent water does not face any CAGRD fees. Groundwater, fresh groundwater does. So it's very important that as much effluent as possible can be brought to the preserve golf course. To get the effluent up to the golf course, in addition to being promised all that the preserve can possibly take, Saddlebrook Utilities Company will build a pipeline of sufficient size to get the water up there. And that is approximately a $700,000 cost that will be borne by Saddlebrook Utilities Company. The bottom line with regard to the guarantee of the effluent and the water pipeline, the new water pipeline, is that it will reduce our annual CAGRD fees beginning immediately at $150,000 a year. And it will only go up from there because CAGRD fees continue to escalate on an annual basis. The cost for the golf courses, the deeded lands, and the other areas that I mentioned is $2 million, and that is due at the time of closing. The HOA intends to fund the $2 million by borrowing from its existing reserve fund and then paying it back at $100,000 a year for the next 20 years. Analysis was completed by the Finance Committee to ensure that by borrowing the $2 million and then doing the payback over the period of time that we're looking at doing it, it will not impact the reserve funds to the point where it would cause an issue. The bottom line to each of us as homeowners is as follows. If the golf course purchase goes through, there will be a one-time special assessment in 2018 of $185. Then there is a projected increase of dues during the next 5 years on an average of 2.8% per year for the next 5 years. That averages out to about $60 a year. The $60 a year is taking into account not only the needs of golf courses, but also all of the HOA. So for those of you, let me just do a little quick math here. In 2017, our dues were $1,980. The projected maximum increase we're looking at for 2018 at $60 would then bring the dues to $2,040. In 2019, they would then be $2,100, and so on and so forth through the first 5 years. The numbers we're very comfortable with these numbers. They're based on the fact that while the Golf Task Force was doing its due diligence and coming up with its cost scenarios, at the same time, our Finance Committee, our controller, and our general manager were working on a 5-year plan, a financial 5-year projection. So once the Golf Task Force finished its financial projections, and once the Finance Committee and our controller finished its financial projections for the rest of the HOA, the two sets of numbers were married, and everybody's confident at that level. You guys, did I forget anything? Pardon? Oh, right. So one of the other things that isn't part of the negotiations, but there are a couple of other benefits that we've worked through with regard to if we purchase the golf courses. First of all, the Preserve Pro Shop will remain as it is, where it is. The intent will be to reduce the size of the Mountain View Pro Shop to become more of a starter shack. That would be a new building. It would be next to the area where, if you're familiar with the Mountain View, the Mesquite Grill patios, there's that area where grilling occurs, and then there's green lawn right beside it going to the southwest. One of those plats of land would be the new Pro Shop starter shack at no more than 800 square feet. The projected cost for that is about $150,000. The entire amount would be funded through our community improvement fund that went into existence as of last July. So that means that no additional monies by all of us as homeowners will be needed in order to to build that Pro Shop. The existing Pro Shop would then turn into additional meeting space, which if you've looked at our strategic plan and our past surveys, we always seem to be in dire need of additional space. The area where the Mesquite Fitness Center currently is, and which was slated to become meeting rooms, will actually be enlarged to take out the two small walls from it and the storage area beside it. A new floating wood floor will be put in, so we have additional dancing space for all of our dance clubs and organizations. So that is kind of the scenario of what the package includes. With that, I would like to go one other thing. What you have in front of you, or what you've been giving, is a copy of our frequently asked questions document. This was prepared by our golf task force over the last week, and it's based upon after our first four presentations, we then had an area or a email address upon which people could go ahead and ask questions. So the document that you're looking at is a compilation of almost all of the most frequently asked questions. It will continue to be updated as we progress through this scenario. And with that, I'd like to open the floor up for questions. We have two microphones, one's on each side of the auditorium. When you come up to the mic, just a couple things. Please give us your name, your unit and lot number. You have 2 minutes to address your question. If you have more than one question, and if there's a line behind you, we just ask that you go to the end of the line so that everybody gets a chance, but you'll be able to ask multiple questions. Okay.
I'm Bob Russell. I'm from Unit 24, Lot 107. First of all, I want to thank you for what I think you've done a very thorough job in all these investigations and plans. My questions, since my background is financial, primarily have to do with projections and securing certain of those projections come true. I'm going to ask questions because I'm going to be a devil's advocate. So please don't think that this means I'm not in favor of this. But I do have certain questions, projections that have been made. The first concern that I have, and probably the biggest concern, has to do with the water. And I think it's wonderful that you negotiate this deal to save $150,000 a year on water. My first question is actually two parts. Number one, I noticed that in the agreement, we're to pay them $2 million upon the closing, and they have 6 months from that date to finish the pipeline. So the question is, number one, what assurance do we have that they will actually finish this pipeline on time or even finish it? Do we have some sort of performance bond? Or maybe we should perhaps withhold certain money until this is finished. And the second part of this question is, since they're not required to finish this pipeline until 6 months after we close, I noticed that the projections in for next year show the same amount for water as in the other prior year. But if we're not going to have this $150,000 savings right up front until 6 months later, why wouldn't the projection be higher in 2018?
Let me address the first part of your question, the financial piece. I'll let the financial folks do that. But as far as the pipeline is concerned, you are correct in that they have 6 months to build that pipeline. But if you look at section 3.3 of the letter of intent, when we sit down to negotiate the final sales agreement, we will have language in there that there will be some kind of monetary penalty or accruement of water credits to us or something of that nature to offset those CAGR costs.
There is no specific penalty stated in there other than we could sue them.
No, what I just said was during the final negotiations of the actual sales contract, the sales agreement, specific language will then be included.
What type of penalty will there be?
I didn't hear you, I'm sorry.
What type of penalty would there be if they're late or if they don't perform?
The most common type is a monetary penalty.
How much?
Again, that has to be negotiated. I would also mention that the first 6 months of the year are the months of the year when we really don't need that type of effluent up at the preserve. There is an existing pipeline that does port effluent up there. It's just not of the size that we need, particularly in the summer months or doing overseeding in the fall when a lot of water is needed. With regard to your question on water costs, I'll let the finance group handle that.
So you're saying that there would be no financial impact if we did not have this new pipeline for 6 months?
I'd say it's minimal. It wouldn't start to occur until Rick and Bob, correct me if I'm wrong, like about April or May.
Yes.
About April or May. And once again, it's dependent upon the weather.
Mm-hmm. Right. And since there's no one else here, can I get to my second question?
Well, Joyce needs to answer your question with regard to the water costs.
Well, I actually think it's been answered since they have the 6 month period. And if they take the whole period, most of that is going to be in a time when we don't need to have that effluent. So we don't anticipate a significant impact in the financials.
However, the other part of the financials is that the CAGR fees that you incur for using potable water aren't in the line item called under expenses called water. The CAGR fees are paid with your real estate taxes or your property taxes. It's a fee that's in arrears of the actual usage of the water because they wait to see for the year what your water usage is, and then they apply that to your property tax bill. In addition, the hard part about trying to do an apples to oranges comparison, if you're looking at our property tax bill or our projections versus what Saddlebrook Development Company's tax bill has been, is that the developer, when he developed the preserve, and this isn't just our developer, it's any of them that now fall under CAGR, when they put their plans together and they bring it to the appropriate governing bodies about how much water they envision that this development is going to use, through the negotiation process with CAGR, they're given an allowance of water credits, which they can use to apply against their CAGR fees. So over the period of time and this is, I know, it's a lot of information and I don't want to get too deep. All I'm trying to do is explain that over the years, Saddlebrook Development Company has used their water credits to reduce the CAGR fee. We don't have water credits. So immediately upon taking over, our property taxes would look different if we didn't have the ability to use the effluent.
But I'll let this other gentleman talk first, and then I have some more.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm Ed Weezahan, Unit 17, Lot 127. Basically, my concern deals with an amenity that has caused a lot of controversy over the past few years. It deals with the 6 to 8 pickleball courses that are projected from that property that's going to be handed over to us. I neither play tennis or softball or pickleball, so I have no thing to grind as far as this, but we've had a lot of controversy about noise with pickleball. And I think it's a shame that they have a membership of 700 people. At least that's the figure that I had. They have a treasury of $200,000, and they're always being pushed around. This is about, I would say, the third time that I can remember that they've been granted a area that will probably come under some sort of controversy, legal choice or something like that. So I think I didn't see any kind of provision that noise factor would be included. So maybe you can enlighten me with regards to that, because I think it's a shame that so many people have to be pushed around and put in a kind of a low point as far as their activity and amenity. And we have 22 tennis courts, and they aren't used hardly at all, except on their days when they do, and now they're sitting pretty well empty. I don't see why the pickleball people can't have a little more leniency as far as noise. They've tried it, different types of things, but they can't.
Okay,
really
thank you.
satisfy.
Thank you for your comments, and I will try and address it because we've used up your 2 minutes. Basically, the what we're governed by are the Pinell County sound ordinances. And so the area where the Ridgeview courts are has passed all of those sound ordinance tests. Before the build out of the new pickleball courts occurs, there will once again be a sound test professionally done to ensure that we are within the Pinell County standards with regard to noise. I don't, as I understand it from the Pickleball Association right now, they don't anticipate that there's going to be any issues since the last set of pickleball courts passed that criteria.
Well, how does the ranch get by with noise and not here?
Okay, that is, it's dependent upon how far you are from residential homes. That's the issue, is how close are you or are you not? Since the ranch's pickleball courts were part of the master plan of the community, they are definitely in an area where they are not going to impact the residents around them.
Okay. Well, thank you. I want to compliment you also. When I was in the first session and you presented, and that was an outstanding presentation.
Thank you. We worked hard on it.
Chuck Kelsey, Unit 29, Lot 69. I also would like to thank the committee and boarders for what I think is a super job. 236 plus pages on the web of information that you all put together. I think you answered millions of questions with what you did. Coming back to water, it sounds as if phase 1 will get no water at all, reclaimed water, per the boarders report with the settlement. And the second part of it is, until the recharge wells are done, what will happen with excess effluent that in the past has just been flooding the preserve?
A couple of things. As far as HOA 1, that's what, when you said phase 1, that's what you mean, is it not? Well, our letter of intent guarantees us, this HOA, that we get all the effluent that we want and or need. So if that might impact HOA 1 at some point. Now, in the wintertime, there's more than enough effluent to go around. And so I can see some effluent going to them during those winter months because there's an excess of it and we wouldn't need it all. As far as the sogginess or the flooding of the course, there are a couple of factors that are involved there, particularly now in the summertime, because the preserve course is so hilly, they have to really dump a lot of water on the hills so that they don't brown out. And as a result, water travels downhill. So at the bottom of those hills, you're going to have soggy areas. That's just the way it is. The developer does not like to put, or Saddlebrook Utility does not like to put effluent down a wash because it's just not good PR, first of all. And people who live behind that wash or around that wash seem to worry about what's flowing in that wash at that time. The recharge wells, they need to get permitted first. He is permitted, when I say he, I mean Saddlebrook Utilities Company. They are permitted for one type of recharge well, but they are looking at another type called an injection well. And that permit process, from what we're being told by the water authorities and the water attorney, is that it is a long process, probably taking about a year. So those injection wells won't be up and running for quite a while. So what does that mean? It means that there might be times when they have to dump that water on the course until those wells are functional.
So they might dump their extra water on our golf course.
That's what they do
they've
now.
been doing it. And,
I'm sorry, both of you are talking.
okay, that's what they have been doing.
I understand that, but we have been told, going back as far as 2004, the water treated effluent could not be discharged into a waterway. It was a DNR violation. If we own the golf course, we don't necessarily want it on our golf course. Do we have to take it? That's my real question.
We definitely want the effluent because of the cost factors.
That's not my question. Do we have to take excess above and beyond what the golf course needs?
According to the letter of intent as it's written right now, and it's not the final sales agreement, yes, we are taking that water.
Thank you.
Okay.
However,
but one caveat. Right now, we're paying for that. In the future, we will not be paying for it. Okay.
yes,
Hi, I'm Nancy Odson, Unit 47, 173. And my question is about this effluent water as well. With all these washes, when the rain does come, is that water redirected somewhere and then sprinkled on the golf courses?
I don't think so.
no.
No.
The water goes through normal drains and no, it doesn't get used.
Thanks.
I'm Bob Russell, and I haven't moved in the last 20 minutes. My next question has to do with the projections of income. I see that you have a rather aggressive marketing plan, and there's some very good ideas in the marketing plan, and that you've projected increases in revenue every year. And I think that's contra to the overall trend of less golfers and the fact that everybody is getting older in Saddlebrook in general, and that you're likely to have some decline in the revenues. And also I noticed that while you have projected a lot of these very good plans for marketing, the question is who's going to do the marketing, because I don't see any projection for somebody to be paid to do that. And I think that's going to be a rather time-consuming job. You have plans, for instance, to have radio and television spots, but I don't see anything to produce the radio and television spots. So how are we going to be able to maintain an increase in revenues over the next 5 years? in light of these things.
Okay, I think your question is broken down into two areas. The first one is with regard to increased revenues and the perception that golf is declining in the community. And so we'll answer that one first. Not me.
Golf has leveled out in this community. It's actually not declining. We actually got a report from the, who was that from, man? USGA? A couple days ago, United States Golf Association, there were 2.4 million new golfers in America in 2016. So golf trended downwards for many years. Basically, the numbers leveled off. Golf was overbuilt. At one point, we had over 17,000 golf courses in America. We're down to about 14,500 just in the past 10 years. So golf, like anything else, I equate it to the strip malls or the malls that developers built in this nation that are sitting empty everywhere. It's all about supply and demand and where's the next course going to be built or the next mall going to be built. Golf in here, the numbers, financials in here show a downward trend as far as profit loss the last 3 years, but there's a lot of variables in there that you got to read into. All the capital improvements they've done, doing the greens on Mountain View in 2015 to the tune of probably close to $500,000 in 5.5 months worth of lost revenue coinciding with that. They don't capitalize expenses like that, so that hit their bottom line. They've actually made money in here year over year over year with these golf courses. They've shown a profit. So with my background in the business, these courses can at least break even, and I say that by just in virtue of keeping prices way down to keep our golfers here instead of sending them somewhere else to save $2 and a free hot dog.
With regard to also the other part of that, part of the marketing plan and where those increased revenues come with regard to new golfers is based upon the fact that this year we're projecting about, in the original budget for 17, we projected 140 resales. That's not new homes, that's resales. And of those resales, for the most part, the individuals who are moving in are those people who are fairly newly retired. They're of an age where they have the wherewithal to go ahead and, if they didn't golf in the past, take it up, or if they are golfers, they'll actually have time to golf. There are incentives built into the marketing report so to hook them into becoming part of the golfing community early on.
Bob?
And then the other part of that question was with regard to, you didn't see the monies associated with staffing with regard to the marketing.
Right.
Bob, put that 2.2 million in perspective. That's down from the heyday of Tiger Woods era where we were breaking all kinds of records with golfers, and that was only 2.4 million at that time. So it is on a rise slightly. And there's a Forbes report also on the increase in golf rounds.
We also have a marketing coordinator on staff here for the first time. She started about a month and a half ago to tie in all of our marketing for all the different departments as we head towards transition, to also do external marketing, and the golf management team will work closely with her if the courses are purchased to further implement the marketing plan.
So this person is going to be doing the marketing for the golf in addition to what she's currently doing?
Yes.
Is any of this cost of her salary going to be allocated to the golf course?
No, it's a general administrative position to market the entire community.
Is she going to have time to do her regular duties
Yes.
plus this? So that means right now she's not fully utilized.
We're actually already looking at marketing paraphernalia, for lack of a better term. She will have the time to do it, yes.
Right. Basically, what's happened in the past is we took what was a food and beverage administrative position that tried to coordinate the marketing aspects for F&B and also do administrative duties. That position has been reclassified so that she is now responsible for marketing for the entire community, and those administrative duties of F&B have to be soaked up by F&B management.
If nobody else has questions,
Actually,
have one more.
I think we do have one right here. Do you have?
Okay,
And then
I'll
we'll come back. And then we'll come back.
Yeah, I don't see a line. One question about revenue is $55,000 increased Saddlebrook revenue for next year. 4 combined questions on costs that I don't see anywhere in the financial information. Borders recommended covering the Gulf storage areas. I did not see that. Borders suggested that we have a $100,000 issue with gas storage. I did not see that other than a plan in, I don't know, 2020 and 2030 something. The lake liner repair that's still to be resolved with RCI, and inadequate maintenance facilities, which Borders estimated an $80,000 expense. What's the status, number 1, of the revenue and 4 of the expense items?
I can comment on a couple of those. First of all, in the capital projections, we do have built in total of $50,000 for fuel tanks replacement.
Except that that's spread out over many, many years, and it appears that it's a
Yeah.
liability right now.
Actually, it's not a liability. At the time that Borders wrote the report, they weren't sure about the tanks and whether they were dual-walled tanks. They actually are dual-walled.
Okay, fine. All right, that takes care of that one then.
What was the next question? Or what were the others? What
How about the golf cart cover storage?
I think we came to the conclusion we didn't need that. There was basic conclusion made that we don't actually need to cover the golf carts.
So we simply rejected that recommendation?
Yeah, we looked at it, and the golf carts lasting here about 10 years, which is a good rate of return on your money.
Okay.
And then we have a guy that services our golf carts and on a maintenance program, and he's keeping them in real good shape. We don't have any split seats or anything.
Okay. Lake liner? Inadequate maintenance facilities?
Again, you're looking at a consultant's report that is spending your money, basically. The maintenance facilities, the one at the reserve is probably as good as anything in this area. The one down here is a little old. It's a metal building. Some of the skin on it may need to be replaced in the upcoming years. Nothing major. We might build some lean-tos to get some of the tractors and the bigger equipment out of the sun. The carts, as Manny said, we don't really see a need to cover the carts. And then what am I missing? Oh, the lake liner. I got a quote recently, which was the 4th time this company had actually done a quote on this particular lake to fix the lake, and that's part of the negotiating team's points to discuss. It's actually in the letter of intent, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes, it's in the letter of intent to figure out who's going to bear those costs.
We've already kind of come to terms with that. I can't mention them right now, but the impact to the association will be minimal.
Thank you.
For those of you who don't know Damon's background, because you weren't at one of the other presentations, Damon's now in his 23rd year as an active member of the Golf Course Superintendents Association of America, or
Yes,
did I get that right?
GCSA.
Okay. Would you give them the rest of your background, Damon, so they understand where your knowledge base comes from?
I spent 16 full years on golf courses in the Southeast, mainly in Myrtle Beach and Hilton Head, 2 of the top 4 markets in the world. I'm a certified golf course superintendent, one of about 1,400 in the world that have ever done that, not just current, but ever over the past 80 years of the GSSA being an association. And I've run multi-course facilities pretty much most of those 16 years that I was active as a superintendent. My last job as executive director of Cincinnati Hilton Head, which had 15,000 residents and 3 18-hole courses. We actually broke even on our golf courses, basically doing internal golf. We didn't even have to market it outside. And I won't get into those details, but it's a doable thing. I've done it before, and it's a very doable thing.
Thank you. Sir.
My name's Don Plappinger, Unit 29, and I do not know my lot number. One of the big concerns seems to me that our HOA dues are going to be going up $60, as you've addressed. To put things into perspective, how do our HOA dues compare to other like communities? So HOA 1, the ranch, the Views, who owns their golf course, the one that's down by Marana, they own their golf course. Have you looked at that? How do our dues currently and projecting forward for the 5 years compare to those other like communities who own and run their own golf courses?
Mike, I know that you had some numbers in comparison with HOA 1.
I can speak to HOA 1. Their dues are $2,383 a year, or roughly $2,400. Their dues have been pretty consistent the last few years. In the first 10 years, they had assessments of about $3,000 per household. One of those was $1,000 for their clubhouse. So they pretty well stabilized their dues, and they handle other things vis-a-vis special assessments, which they haven't had recently. So,
Okay.
pardon me?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay. I believe, and maybe someone help me, on Saddlebrook Ranch, their dues are above ours currently. And they also have another thing they're doing for their food and beverage. It's a $300 type add-on. So I don't know the specific numbers, but I know they're higher.
Actually, what they have is, in addition to their base dues, they have a $325 a year amenities fee. And when their F&B operation opens with their brand new clubhouse in Q1 of 2018, they will then have a $25 a month F&B fee. So their dues are already far exceeding ours.
Within the Robeson organization, only the ranch at Eloy and Saddlebrook Ranch are lower than ours. That's because they both have 500 or 600 homes. The other Robeson communities are several $100s a year higher than ours. Plus, on top of that, to Teresa's point, have an amenity fee on top of that. The Strategic Planning Task Force in 2015 and early 2016 did benchmarking around the nation. They tried to do 15 similar communities. I think they ended up with 10 responses or 10 valid responses out of 12 of the 15 that did respond. And I'm not sure, I wish Diane Ashby was here because she could rattle off that information. Our dues in comparison to those benchmarking communities around the Southwest and one or two in Florida were way lower than those other communities. And we are more amenitized than all the communities that they could find out there. Most places don't have a theater like this that you're sitting in as a prime example. So the dues here, found a thing. I'm working on the 5-year plan on a daily basis still. I found a sheet the other day that on average, the dues in here in the last 12 years have gone up somewhere between 6 and 8% a year. The last 5-year plan done in 2014 estimated that there would be $100 dues increase every year for the 5 years following 2014. Luckily, they've not had to do that. So last year was the first year that I could find really that we had no dues increase at all in here. So, 2.8 is a pretty small dues increase going forward. And I want to remind you, that's for the HOA. That wasn't built in to cover golf. That was to cover the expense of the HOA. We've got Prop 206, the minimum wage law that goes up steadily till 2020. And a lot of that increases to cover those minimum wage jobs, to be honest with you.
I think for what we get, our HOA dues are extremely reasonable, even on the very low side. I'm in the minority, obviously, but I do think that to give people perspective, it would be really important to point these things out in writing so that people can see how do our dues compare to other like communities, especially HOA 1, whose dues are probably $400 more than ours, and that ours will not even get to that point of where they're paying now until we are at the 5-year point of your budget projections. I don't think people have a perspective now in what our dues are. They only look at, this is what I'm paying now, this is what I'll pay next year, and this, without having something to compare it to, you just think yours are going up, but nobody else's are. So I think that would be helpful in having people get a handle on where our dues fit in comparison to other like communities.
Thank you, Don. One of the other things too, because we've seen it come through under FAQs that we're dealing with, is there were things like, well, in the past, our dues were rising at about 5 to 6% a year. How is it that we can only do a projection based upon 2.8%. So there's just a couple factors also that go into that. First of all, we continue to build more homes, which means we have fresh dues money coming in. In addition to that, in the past, we didn't have the CIF fund. And without going into a lot of detail, if you recall, the CIF fund can only be used two ways, those funds, either for new for the community or to be used to augment the reserve funds. A portion of our dues that we pay annually goes into our reserve funds. Thereby, if we don't have to keep increasing our dues to get our reserve funds where they need to be, that helps with the cost of our, or the price of our dues. Having the CIF fund continually build a treasury upon which we can put part of that into the reserve funds is another factor that's helping us keep our dues at the level that they're at, or that we project them to be. Sir.
I promise this is my last question. It has to do with what you were just talking about, the reserve fund. I noticed that the board has said that the piping, which is one of the biggest expenses, capital expenses in the golf course, should last 40 years. And the projection is that we're not going to need to replace this piping for quite a number of years. I forget how many years. It wasn't within the next 5 or 6 years. One of the expenses that Saddlebrook One had was that they had to have an assessment because the piping of their golf course, some of it had to be replaced. So my question is, number one, what assurance do we have that our piping is in good enough shape that it's not going to have to be replaced for quite a number of years? And number two, what would happen as far as assessments if, in fact, we were wrong about that estimate? Would we have to have an additional assessment like Saddlebrook One did?
I can try to address that. This is the easiest area I've ever lived in around golf courses for piping to not wear out prematurely. Oh.
Okay. The question is about irrigation, the irrigation piping and the projections for how long it will last versus in HOA 1 after they had a special assessment because they had to replace their irrigation at an earlier time period. So the question is, why do we feel more comfortable that we're okay, and would we have a special assessment needed in the future because of it?
Again, I was going to say that this area is pretty simple as far as piping not moving around in the ground due to frost heave or floods or what have you. It actually takes a jackhammer in this area. I just redid my irrigation in my home in Oro Valley to actually bust the ground up to put pipe in the ground. Pipe doesn't move out here. I've seen golf courses in all regions of the United States. Actually, in my hometown of Virginia, golf course is one of the oldest standing golf courses in America. It opened in 1924. It's an equity-owned membership that they've replaced their irrigation one time in 93 years. The saving grace to the irrigation on both of these courses here in our due diligence, the pump stations here have been meticulously maintained. If you don't maintain the pump stations, you create what's called water hammer, and that will begin to bust the piping out of the ground at the seams and the joints. And the pump stations here are absolutely in phenomenal shape. They've done their routine maintenance on them. And that's really the key to our feel good feeling about not having to replace the irrigation systems anytime soon. And they are both budgeted in the next 25 years, and that's an expense that we may not have to spend in the next 25 years.
We had a leak on number 11 several years ago, just past at Mountain View, just past the hazard where the women have a drop zone. And I got down in the hole, and the main line looked pretty good. And I do have some knowledge of plastic. We did it in California for gas lines for years, and there's no discoloration, which is a key. The problem with Mountain View is the way they join each piece together, they have to be blocked up also, where the new way of doing it is through plastic fusion, which they've done up at the preserve. That was put in with plastic fusion, as I understand it. The problem with preserve is that the way they have to get their effluent to irrigate is the way they have to switch the water around, and it causes water hammer, and it's broken up there a couple of times at least, if not more than that. But our crews have been able to fix it. And so by going to a different system on how you get effluent up there, will protect that line even more.
I just want to say in conclusion, I want to thank everybody here. I think you've done a wonderful job. And thank you for asking, responding to everybody's questions here. While it may not have sounded like it, I am in favor of this proposal. I think while I have some reservations about the budget, I think the advantages far outweigh the possible disadvantages, and I do plan to vote for it. Thank you.
Thank you. But wait, there's more.
Quick question for Manny. In the 2018 budget, there's 20,000 allocated for fungicides and herbicides. That account goes to zero after 2018 with no corresponding increase in chemicals, fertilizers, or soil amendments. What is going on relative to fungicides and herbicides?
I know they've increased the amount they're doing because hopefully they're going to sell these courses and want to make it look halfway decent.
No, it's ours.
And, pardon me?
I think he's talking about our $20,000.
Oh, no, I think somebody in the finance probably better answer.
I can answer that. We put in 20,000 for next year in anticipation if the residents do choose to purchase to actually clean up both golf courses pretty aggressively as far as weeds. The Poania intrusion needs to be stopped before it snuffs out Bermuda completely. So going forward after that, we'll see what we need. It won't be 20,000. We may need an extra 2,000 or something here and there, but which we should be able to pull out of the chemical budget.
So after that would be included in the other line items?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. We also added money the first few years, extra money to replace signage and just to upgrade some little details in both courses.
And with that, with no other questions, we're done. Thank you very much for attending.
I see why they put makeup on movies.